The topic we are discussing right now is demand and supply, as well as market equilibrium, and how it is applied in the real world. Therefore, at the end of this lesson, students are expected to be able to explain and understand demand and its applications, supply and its applications, analyze the market equilibrium, and be able to plot the necessary graphs and make the necessary calculations, understand price ceiling and price floor, and be able to explain externalities. Right now, we want to look at demand and supply and market equilibrium. What is demand? Demand is the quantity of commodity a buyer is willing and able to purchase at a given time and at a given price. By implication, an individual must be willing, must be ready to buy the product, and at the same time must be able. The ability to purchase the product focuses on the purchasing power. That means such an individual must have the income or the money that will help when it comes to purchasing of that product. There are various determinants of demand. One is the price of commodity. If a crate of egg is 100 pula, an individual may buy only one because considering Botswana prices, 100 pula is quite outrageous for a crate of eggs. But when a crate of egg is 35 pula, 30 pula, an individual may decide to buy 6, 5, or 4. In other words, an individual can increase the quantity he or she is purchasing. So price of the commodity is a great determinant of what somebody will purchase in an economy. The level of income, which is the money that an individual holds for time, can also determine. The price of related good is also a determinant of demand. For example, if the price of tastic rice is 50 pula per 5 kg and the price of Uncle Sam rice is 25 pula still for 5 kg. A rational human being that wants to economize and utilize resources may not purchase tastic rice at 50 pula since both of them are substitutes. So price of related goods can determine how much, what quantity a consumer can purchase per time. Of course, taste and preference they change at different times. And advertisement. Advertisements can motivate and can stimulate desire to purchase goods when it comes to an individual. The laws of demand state the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. By implication, there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity. The lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded, and the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. It means the quantity demanded of a good falls when the price of the good rises, and the quantity demanded of a good rises when the price of the good falls. This is a negative or inverse relationship. Now, let's look at individual demand. Individual demand is the quantity of commodity one person is willing and able to purchase at various prices and at different times. Let's look at this schedule. This is what an individual is willing to purchase. The quantities of Lolli Pop willing to purchase at different prices. We can see when it's 0.50 pula, that means when it's 50 tebe, he was willing to buy 10. But when it's 2 pula 50 tebe, he was willing to buy only 2. This is depicting the law of demand, which shows when the price is high, the individual is willing to buy fewer quantities, and when the price is very low, individual is willing to buy high quantity. This can be expressed using a demand curve. And a demand curve is a graphical representation of that tabulated demand schedule. And on this graph, we are going to see different quantities that this individual is willing to purchase at different price. And that is why we see the demand curve sloping downward. And a demand curve sloping downward shows the negative or inverse relationship between the two variables. And the two variables are price and quantity. There are two types of changes or shifts we have in demand. One is change in demand. Change in demand is the entire movement of the demand curve, either to the left, which is a decrease or an inward shift, or to the right, which is an increase or an outward shift. Now, there are various factors that can change demand entirely from its original position. One can be change in income. For example, student allowance. If student allowance increases from 5,000 to 10,000, most definitely what a student will purchase will increase, either the quantity or the quality, irrespective of the ruling price. So that can lead to an outward shift of the demand curve. Now let me show you this in the next slide. And this is a typical example of a leftward shift showing the arrow moving leftward or inward, and then a rightward shift showing the arrow pointing to the right or outward. So an increase in student allowance will shift the curve from D0 to D2, which is an increase in demand. But if there is a decrease in allowance from 5,000 to 1,000, then you see that an individual will not have enough to purchase. So level of income can affect change in demand. Now, the price of the commodity itself. For example, like I cited an example the other time, especially if the goods are related, they can affect what an individual will purchase. For example, Pampers and Huggies. These are products that are related and they are called substitute goods. So a change in the price of a related product will affect the demand of the other. Increase in the price of Huggies will increase the demand for Pampers. So when the price of Huggies increases, there's going to be a reduction in demand from D0 to D1. And that is why you can see the arrow falling from D0 to D1, showing an inward shift. Now, I want you to also apply other factors and study your notes and look at how these factors can change demand. And we are going to discuss that next class. Change in quantity demanded is the movement along the same demand curve. It doesn't shift to the left or to the right. And the only factor that affects this is the price of the commodity in question. Let me show you this on the next slide. Change in quantity demanded can be depicted using the simple curve adapted. We can see that the change is from point A, or the movement is from point A to B, still on the same curve. And the factor that affects this is the price of this particular product. So if the price of crate of X increase, demand will fall. If the price decrease, demand will increase. So this is a particular change that can affect the curve without shifting it inward or outward. Supply. This is a quantity of commodity a producer is willing and able to sell at a particular time and at a particular price. The law of supply states the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied, and the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. The relationship is direct and is positive. The factors that can determine supply are number of sellers, taxes and subsidies. Of course, when government tax or increases taxes on product, it can reduce the quantity of product being supplied. But when government subsidizes for agricultural product, for example, it motivates producers to supply more of such commodities in the market. The number of related products, natural disaster, cost of raw materials, change in technology which can drag back production process, and firms' objectives. Supply schedule is a table that shows the relationship between price of the goods and quantity supplied. This is a typical supply schedule for lollipops, at which the prices the manufacturer is willing to supply the goods are positively related with the quantity being supplied. This reflects the law of supply, which says the higher the price, the higher the quantity being supplied, and the lower the price, the lower the quantity being supplied. We can see the positive relationship between the price and quantity supplied, and this informs the reason why the supply curve slopes upward from right to left. We have change in supply, which is a bodily shift of the supply curve from left to right or from right to left. And all factors that can change supply, that affect supply and that determine supply, change these graphs, such as firms' objectives, cost of raw materials, natural disaster, price of related goods, among others. Change in quantity supplied is the movement along the same supply curve. And the only factor responsible for this movement is the price of the commodity in question. Demand and supply equilibrium occurs when quantity demanded and quantity supplied meet at the same price. Let us look at this demand and supply for lollipops. At different prices, the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied are reflecting here on the demand schedule. Now, if we plot this demand and supply equilibrium, we are going to arrive at a graph that shows the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied intersecting at the same price. Now, when we look at this table and we look at price 1.50, we will see that the quantity demanded is 6 and the quantity supplied is 6. That is the only price at which both the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied equate. Now, this is obvious in the graph that has been plotted. We can see that at price 1.50, the quantity demanded is 6 and the quantity supplied is 6. This is what we call demand and supply equilibrium. By implication in the market, there will be a price at which there will be an agreement between the suppliers and the customers. A point at which the price that is being charged in the market is favorable to a manufacturer and is also favorable to an individual that is purchasing. We can have excess demand, which can lead to shortage, and at the same time we can have excess supply, which can lead to surplus. Excess demand are all points below the equilibrium point, and there are points below the equilibrium or areas below the equilibrium point because at those prices you can see that individuals are willing to purchase more because the prices are low. This is not favorable for an individual, for a business organization selling, because he or she will not want to sell below the equilibrium price. So most of the time, Excess demand leads to shortage. Excess supply are areas above the equilibrium, and those are areas where the prices are higher than the equilibrium. And of course, no rational human being wants to pay higher price for a product. So demand normally reduces at those areas, and this can lead to surplus in the market. So those are the two areas that you must note when you are explaining and when you are plotting the equilibrium demand and supply in the market. And as a business organization, when it comes to decision making, then this will help you to determine how high your prices will be, the kind of product that you will increase its prices, for how long or what duration would you increase such prices. It helps you to determine what to invest in product. It helps you to determine what consumers will purchase. And it helps you to also forecast what your profit level will be as an organization. Price control. Government uses this legal restriction and regulation to control how high or low a market price may go. So economists also use this legal restriction, and government enforces these prices, sometimes in order to maintain affordable goods in the society, like agricultural products. They also enforce prices in the economy to slow down inflation. When it comes to minimum wage and living condition of the members of the community of the society, the government uses the price control as the legal restriction. So during times of crises or emergencies or wars, consumers are protected from upsurge in prices that can make their standard of living to be very low, that can bring poverty, or that can lower the lifestyle of the people. So government uses price control in order to stabilize the economy at various times. There are two types of price control. You have the price ceiling and then you have the price floor. The price ceiling is the maximum price set by the government, which any firm should not exceed. It is referred to as an upper limit for the price. And that price will always be below the equilibrium price. More often than not, price ceiling leads to inefficiencies because individuals will want to buy those products, but the products are not available because the owners or the sellers are not willing to offer this product at that given price. For example, renting a house, if government enforces the price control for landlords, and if these prices are not satisfactory when it comes to the landlord's preference, then this landlord will not allocate these resources efficiently when it comes to consumers. Wasted resources. You see individuals scouting around looking for products, spending money, spending time, and using effort to ensure that they're able to obtain that product because of shortage. And sometimes when there is price ceiling, the product is inefficiently low in quality. Apartments may not be renovated, the toilets may not be presentable, among others. The condition may not be palatable. And so price ceiling can lead to inefficiently low quality. And eventually it can lead to black market, where products are hoarded and products are sold illegally at prices higher than those ones that government has set. Now, I'm going to show you the effect of price setting using a graph on the next slide. We can see from the graph that price selling has led to shortage when it comes to renting apartment. The equilibrium price is different from the price that the government has enforced. So equilibrium price is at PE here, and the price the government has enforced is below equilibrium price, which is PC. By implication, you will see that the red line showing the supply curve is an indication of the quantity that the landlords or the apartments that the landlords are ready to make available. And that is A1. And you can see that point A2 at that enforced price of PC. What individuals demand. The number of houses, accommodations that individuals, tenants are scouting for. So price ceiling usually leads to shortage because suppliers are not comfortable with the prices. And the price floors. This is the minimum price buyers are required to pay for a good. It is set by the government and is usually a price that is above the equilibrium. Most of the time, sellers are more comfortable with that price and they produce or manufacture or supply a product of high quality still at high price, of which buyers cannot afford and which leaves them with surplus. Now, let's see this in the graph that is in the next slide. The effect of price flow. We can see the equilibrium point and we can see the price above the equilibrium point. If we trace it down to QO, that is what individual is willing to pay. And this is what individual is willing to purchase, rather at that price. And if we trace it to QS, this is what the sellers are willing to supply at that price. QO, what individuals are willing to purchase at that price. QS, what sellers are willing to supply at that price. We can see that gap, that disparity, and this will lead to surplus in the market. So either way, price ceiling and price floor are what governments use to sustain and to maintain and to control what obtains in the market. Considering that every economy changes because of the cycle of the business. And there is no economy that does not undergo a change that is negative or positive, that will impact its society in a good way or in an adverse way. So it is left for the government to be able to control what obtains in the market. Otherwise, there's going to be that disparity and instability in the market. And when there is distortion, too much and instability, then the economy will face a lot of challenge.